by one of our regulars on the show, a very valuable asset to deploy on this show. He is a retired two-star admiral named Mark C. Montgomery. He is the executive director of the Cyberspace Solarium Commission and a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy. He's a good friend of the show. Welcome back, Admiral. How are you?
Good. Yeah, Dwayne, thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here today.
So I know, being a retired admiral, you're going to be loath to talk about politicians and do the politics stuff, and I'm not going to have you do that. But there was a fascinating conversation last week about the Navy and the Indo-PACOM and what to do with China and Taiwan. And there was a lot of thinking going on about where the military-industrial complex is. All that was done with Rahm Emanuel, former two-term governor of our mayor of Chicago and former ambassador from Japan. Many people think he's dipping his toe into the water of maybe running for president, maybe not, but at least he's, as an ambassador, he's thinking about the Indo-PACOM and thinking through these issues. I want to play some of that for you, but one of the things that he did say that I don't have a cut for is that, look, we know that the CCP is putting as many boats and holes in the water as fast as possible, but they don't have a history of being able to actually navigate and do naval operations the way the U.S. does, the way the Brits do, the way Australia does, the way a lot of our allies do in the Indo-PACOM region. And he said that last week, and then all of a sudden over the weekend, we have this incident where a Philippine cutter was leading 12 fishing boats through a channel, a passage in the South China Sea, and the CCP were chasing him. And because of a maneuver of the Philippine boat, we had a collision between a CCP destroyer and one of its own Coast Guard ships. Admiral, did you follow? What do you make of this?
Yeah, I did. Well, listen, first of all, I have a lot of time for Ambassador Emmanuel. He was a very good, Ram was a very good ambassador in Japan, and more than most was engaged in the challenges we have in the Indo-Pacific and was a frank speaker about it, even if his boss, the president, didn't necessarily appreciate it. So I think he was fantastic, and in that regard. So I have a lot of time for what he says, and he was right in predicting this. The Chinese Coast Guard has gotten very big very fast. In fact, they have a Coast Guard ship that's bigger than that Navy destroyer. That isn't what was involved in this case. It was a smaller Coast Guard ship, but you've
Right.
got hundreds of Coast Guard ships, hundreds of PLA Navy ships, 1,000 military militia ships that are out there operating, all of them with varying degrees of professionalism. Now, I will tell you, this maneuver you see right here is very
Man.
unprofessional. That was it appeared to be the destroyer cutting in front of the bow of the small cutter, the Coast Guard cutter, and neither ship did well. But I definitely saw, unfortunately, a number of sailors on each ship in the proximity of the contact. Now, the good news is, in those parts of the ship, there usually aren't that many people in the actual confines of the ship, so hopefully
Right.
not too many people were lost. But you could see some
That's
serious
wild.
damage.
That's Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner stuff, boat edition,
It
right?
is. It is. Except that the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner were not on the same side. And
Well, that's true. That's true.
that's unprofessional. Listen, our ships have complained about this during freedom of navigation operations. What that destroyer did is not uncommon. Now, we have very good ship handlers, and we're at our highest level of navigation detail when we're doing a freedom of navigation transit. And we get that kind of unprofessional, borderline, what we'd say, BS activity by their Navy. And in this case, the cutter didn't expect it. They did not expect that maneuver from their own Navy. And both bridges lost situational awareness, but particularly the destroyer's bridge, I think. And you got this casualty. The Philippines have nothing to do with this casualty. I mean, they're proximate. They filmed it, but the two ships responsible for this are the cutter and the Navy, the Coast Guard, Chinese Coast Guard cutter, and the Chinese Navy destroyer, both of which were in repeated significant violations of the rule of the sea.
Yeah.
And in the
Yeah.
end, they paid the price. And I think some Chinese sailors probably paid the ultimate price there.
That actually would not surprise me one bit. I want to shift while we have a couple minutes left to the interview that Hugh did with Rahm Emanuel. I want to play you one clip from that interview talking about Japan's military industrial complex versus ours, and whether it might be more strategic to let some of the repairs of our current ships be done over in Japan and maybe have them build the hulls and do the retrofitting and Aegis stuff here. Here is Rahm Emanuel, cut number 2, Harley.
Look, I mean, I wrote about this, so I want to give a point out to something. The United States were all responsible for both parties, both political class and commercial class, for allowing our military industrial capacity to shrivel over the years post-Cold War. We overshot the runway from 55 companies to 5 big ones. We didn't get efficiency. We got rewarding, over budget, and behind schedule. No other business professional, besides the military industrial complexes of the United States, have we rewarded year in and year out failure. So in my view, we've talked about it. Ban for 7 years all corporate stock buyback until they fix on time and on budget. And Japan does that. I went personally with Del Toro, the former Secretary of Navy, to see Mitsubishi production, their capacity. They could tell you 3 years from now which screw will be put in which base on what hour of the Tuesday of the 3rd week of November. And they've never been behind budget or behind schedule in the way that the United States has. Nowhere close.
Mark Montgomery, we could spend an hour on this. We could spend 3 hours on this. I got a minute and a half. What do you make of this?
So I agree with them. It's a disaster. You can build a logistics ship, not a warship, a logistics ship, for about 28 cents on the dollar in Korea, as you can in the United States. And I think it'd be slightly more than that, maybe 32 or 35 cents on the dollar in Japan. It's a lot of things drive that: industrial base inefficiency, aging infrastructure, union fees. They all come together to triple or quadruple the price of the hulls of our ships versus our Asian allies. And look, let's be the truthful thing. He mentioned Navy Secretary Del Toro. He actually said we ought to do something with Korea, and he was beaten heavily by the Biden Defense Department. The Deputy Secretary Kath Hicks and the Secretary told him to take a big can of shut the heck up and sit in a corner and not say that again out loud. So this is a problem. We absolutely have to fix it. There's a lot of ways to tackle it, but the most important in my mind is to introduce a little bit of risk taking into the system. Part of what's going on here with the stock buybacks and other things is eliminating all the risk in the system. So I'm excited to get this right. But he's right. We're going to have some serious changes.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.